Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Jessica Kalombo, your host. Today we will be closing on our topic, reunifications of Africans. And on board we have Dr. Terry Jackson, who is joining us all the way from New York City and who have been helping us to understand better on this topic and also sharing some of the insight regarding our African brothers and sisters living in America. And today we will be actually closing by understanding what we can create or adapt in a way for us to come together and live together, in a way to grow our economy and help us understand the capacity that we have in hands as African people to help ourselves. Let us hear some from Dr. Terry Jackson, who will be helping us close on this topic. Thank you.
With all the knowledge that we've gained now and everything that we've shared, I don't understand. We all calling them African Americans, but when we're speaking of African Americans, are we talking of African slaves, or are we also talking of those who were already living within the land of America?
When we speak of African American, actually, you hit the nail on the head. It is really those people who were formerly enslaved. And I like to say, and part of the language now for many has been, we were never slaves, we were enslaved, we were forced into that bondage. And if in fact we rebelled, that's the best word, then we would be killed. And so it was through the torture, through the murder, that a group of people showed our ancestors that, hey, if in fact you try to rebel, you try to escape, we'll kill you, we'll maim you. And that conditioned the people to remain enslaved. Not to say that there weren't rebellions, because there were lots of rebellions, and many of the rebellions are really not told to us about, the rebellion. People remember the Denmark VC, and they talk about the Nat Turner, and a few others. But and even the forefathers who started this country, people like Thomas Jefferson, he knew. He said, I think he said that, God is God. If God is a God of power and truth and forgiveness, He'll never forgive us for what we are doing around the enslavement of a group of people. And so I think what you're seeing come to fruition is what we're calling woke. They call it woke now in America. White people are saying, well, we have to stop that woke movement. And that woke movement is a movement of knowledge of self by African Americans. It is a reclamation and understanding that we are African. And with that, what we have yet to do, because we don't quite have the resources, is to start building those businesses to become as dependent upon ourselves as we actually can, and then begin doing business globally so that we can connect with the motherland, Africa, with those resources. But to answer your question again, I'm going to say that title has actually been reserved for the former enslaved people who are our ancestors. They never called the Native Americans, they saw them as quote unquote the Indians, right? They never called they call them Native Americans because they were already here, indigenous to this land. But we know in order for them to be the natives, that they first had to have been African.
It's true. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's so
You're
true.
welcome.
I love that comment. That's so that's so highlighting to understand, because many of us in Africa, we tend to say, oh, African Americans, but some, they have no clue what is beyond, or what is the true meaning to attach to the African American title, which is given to our African people. So I would like to hear from you. What can we create to adapt, or what can we create or adapt in a way to promote unity for all Africans, which means those living here in Africa, in Europe, in America, all over the world, wherever there is an African person, we have to all feel that we are now united as one Africa. What can we do?
You know, conversations like this have to happen, and they have to happen on a global scale and a mass scale, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about how we feel about those on the continent, how they feel about us. Again, I mentioned the myth that the Africans don't like us, which is not true. I think the misinformation, the understanding, and the telling and of the speaking of the truth as to what happened. As you said, there are many on the continent of Africa who don't know what may have happened to us. They may know vaguely, right? But there has to be these conversations, these conferences, and at the same time, as I used the word earlier, simultaneously, we have to do it simultaneously in having the conversations and then creating the vision of what it is that we would like to have as a united people. You know, part of Africa's challenge and why so many people have exploited Africa is because there isn't one military army there.
Yes.
Each country may have its own version of a military, but there is not one military to support and defend the entire continent of Africa. There has to be that, right? And then we have to be able to show some of the leaders in Africa who have access to all of these resources, the gold, the oil, the minerals, that they shouldn't be corrupt, right? That corruptness was actually learned from the Europeans, because that's all they're trying to do. They're trying to be, you know, I've worked with I was in negotiation with the Congo to help provide high-speed satellite internet to the Congo. And in our conversations with the government, in order to move forward to the next step of the contract, someone always was seeking a bribe, right? In order for us to get you the right person to get the contract, then you got to pay us X amount of dollars.
What you said now is true. To have one also military that can also support the whole Africa. So to have also one legislation that can also support Africa, I think that will be the major way for us to move forward as a united nation. So actually coming now to our last questions. How many successful African Americans company do we have in Africa that supports the African economy, which you may be aware of? Yes, maybe two.
You know, it's interesting because we don't have a real African American company that's supporting African Americans, right? Part of what I do as a consultant is I help people grow their businesses. We don't do a good job of getting the knowledge that is necessary for us to build successful businesses, and then what we call scale our businesses, meaning that if I'm in the state of North Carolina, I probably need to have a business, an office in South Carolina or New York or California, or if I have a business on this side of town, I need to have a business on that side of town. And I say that because what happens is when those from other countries come here, say the Chinese or some from Saudi Arabia, or what they call the Middle East, and let me be real clear. I know that the Middle East is Northeast Africa. I know that Israel and Jerusalem, that's all north. That's a part of Northeast Africa. That's the Middle East never has existed. Has never existed. It's the tectonic plates. When you study the land and you study the plates in which the earth was made on, that land belongs to Africa. And a lot of people don't understand and know that. They call it the Middle East. The reason they were calling it the Middle East because they were trying to, in the late 60s, they were trying to separate Egypt from Africa.
From Africa, yes.
Yes. And so They want us to call it the Middle. It's Northeast Africa. It's not the Middle East. So when people from Saudi Arabia come to this country, what they do is they set up businesses in the African American communities, and they take our money. They never reinvest in us.
Us.
And that's been and look, the Chinese come there and all the other countries come there and they take from Africa and they never really reinvest. They're only interested in what they can get.
Yes.
And we have to understand, and I like to call us, we are quote unquote, we're God's people.
Yes.
And with that, we have to understand our right to all that's here and be able to use that. So the greatest African minds must get together with the great African American minds and form these coalitions, these businesses, whether it's in manufacturing and mining, because we know Africa is rich in minerals. And I know that the Congo, even though all of the coltan comes out of the Congo to make our technological devices, and tech companies can't build any devices without the coltan. They're not manufacturing any of the coltan.
Oh,
It's companies coming in. It's like the movie Blood Diamonds, right? We know all
yes.
these diamonds are coming out of Africa,
Yes.
but there's no Africans who are controlling that. Now, one of my good friends who's now deceased, God bless him, he was General Secretary to the president of Liberia many years ago in the late 70s, early 80s. And so he told me, he told me a lot of stories. I think the president at the time was President Tolbert. That was the administration that was assassinated in Liberia. And then President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf became president after that, I guess in the 2000s. But at any rate, you know, he told me many stories of diamond mines and oil and all kinds of cobalt and coltan, all of these minerals that other U.S. companies or companies around the world are extracting out of Africa. They're making goods out of and products out of
Resources.
these minerals, and they're selling them across the globe. And I'm like, why aren't we doing that? When I found out there was not one manufacturing company that was Congolese owned in the Congo, I was extremely upset. And so I said to myself, how can I connect with some of the brothers and sisters in Africa to show them how they can create their own manufacturing facilities? You know, they just had the meeting in Davos, Switzerland, the World Economic Summit about a week ago, and they're planning the global economy, and they're not really and truly inviting the African. I think there was a post that I made a comment on. There was a lady there talking about, we need the United States to come help us. We need Russia to come help us. I said, no, we need to stop begging. Africa needs to stop begging. And what needs to happen is Africa needs to do all this for itself. Africa needs to be left alone by all the other parties, the Europeans, and let Africa become itself. And for the leaders to understand, in the presidents, that all the corruption, I think that his name is PLO Lumumba. I listen to him on YouTube all the time. His whole ministry has been around eliminating corruption amongst African leaders in Africa so that Africa can unite. That corruption also keeps away the African American. Because when I was trying to do business with the Congo and they kept asking for the bribe, I'm like, if I bribe one, I got to bribe all. And I'm just not going to play that game. Why can't we see and do what's best for the greater good of all Africans, to include the African American in the diaspora? We have the knowledge here. We have the education. We have the engineers. So does Africa. We should be able to unite to build for the greater good. But some have a mindset that, even some of the Africans, they have a mindset, well, I'm British because my family moved to the UK, or I'm French because we moved to France. But it's the French that's exploiting you. I can't think of the lady's name, but she went into the history of how much money that Africa has to pay to the French government on a year-to-year basis. It's billions of dollars, right? And they want to claim themselves as being French. For instance, when I was in college, I went to college with a lot of people from Africa, specifically from Ghana and Nigeria were the two largest countries where the Africans came from. And I went to a historically black college and university, which meant that it was predominantly black college is where I attended my undergraduate. And you could sense that they sensed that there was a difference in us, right? And I had professors from who were born in Nigeria. I had professors who were born in the Congo. I had professors who were born in Ghana. But there was a sense that we were different, but yet we looked the same. And they would look at me and they said, "You have to be from Ghana." You know, my nose and all, you have to be from Ghana or the western part of Africa. And I said, I probably am Ghanaian. So that's why I did the DNA test. Oh, Cameroon, I probably am from Ghana because I know all of that was one land at one time. That was one place at one time. Just like Sierra Leone and Ghana. I knew that, Liberia and Sierra Leone was the same at one time. So we have to realize that we are African first.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much again for the beautiful interview. Thank you for attending and joining us. Thank you for the wisdom that you've shared with us. And I hope that all those who will have an opportunity to watch this video will also learn what I've learned today. Thank you so much. Is there any last word you would like to say?
I want to thank you so very much for this opportunity. And yes,
thank you everyone for watching. This was such a beautiful topic. Reunifications of Africans is a way for us to understand how we can come together, unite the whole continent, even those who are outside the continent. You are not strangers, you are still Africans. And so we should be able to represent ourselves by our origins, by our roots, by our values, and by our past history that we have lost as African people. And by doing the right researches, we should be able to take advantage of such knowledge in a way to educate the future nation on how we can all live united as one nation with one vision and one goal. We can conquer anything, and we will be able to grow our economy, create employment, and be able to sustain and maintain our lifestyles as African people. Thank you so much. If you have loved this message and if you have loved everything about this topic, don't forget to subscribe and like and share with others in a way to create awareness. Until then, catch me in my next video. We will be talking about some more of our African values. Bye.